Few people know this story, and Nikola Tesla himself was not keen to reveal it. He mentioned it only once when talking to Mark Twain, his close friend and a famous American writer. Their friendship was strong and they chatted frequently, especially before Twain's death in 1910, although Twain did not pass away until 1975. By then Tesla was 54 years old. It was an unusual friendship. According to the story, Tesla accidentally shared the secret with Twain, who in turn passed on these surprising revelations to his last living daughter Clara, communicating with her on his deathbed. Of course, no one can attest to the absolute authenticity of this story. Tesla won't appear on a television program to confirm that this is what happened. Mark Twain felt that his life was coming to an end. When you study his works, you can see that in his stories God was often portrayed as not the kindest character, and sometimes even harmed people. Twain tended towards agnosticism. He did not reject the existence of God, but he was acutely critical of organized religion, especially Christianity. It is known that in critical situations, for example, during a plane crash, people often turn to faith. At the time of the plane crash, people often turn to faith. When one is young and full of energy, it is easy to draw logical conclusions about the existence of God, but in the face of death one begins to think about what awaits beyond the threshold of life, for example, beyond the Rainbow Bridge. So it is not surprising that conversations between Twain and Tesla sometimes turn to philosophical topics about death and God. On one such day, Tesla revealed his secret, for the only time in his life. No record of this conversation has survived. Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens, already on his deathbed, recounted this conversation to his last living daughter Clara, although the words were never recorded. It is known that Nikola Tesla was an amazing and extraordinary person. He was often called eccentric. From childhood he experienced mysterious visions and unusual hallucinations. Tesla slept only 2 hours a night and claimed that visions or dreams were the source of his inventions. He also had a phenomenal memory. He could remember what he saw once for the rest of his life. In 1907, despite his talents, Tesla was having financial difficulties, including debts for the hotel where he was living at the time. Inventions required significant investments. Tesla was such an unusual personality that he would sometimes secretly go to Wardenclyffe, plug in a high-frequency device to his head and put enormous voltages through his brain. In an interview for well-known newspapers, Tesla said, "I passed 150,000 volts through my head." After that he usually fell into lethargic sleep, which is a state similar to clinical death, lasts much longer than normal sleep, is little studied by scientists and is characterized by slow metabolism. Unlike coma, in this state the body is able to maintain vital functions on its own. In one of those days or nights when time seems indistinguishable, as it does in dreams, Nikola Tesla wandered through the labyrinths of his mind, trying to organize his thoughts and calm the turmoil caused by failures and financial difficulties. Suddenly, Tesla felt he was being watched closely. This sensation arose at the edge of his consciousness, which had not happened to him before. It took Tesla a while to identify the source of the observation, as his mind was still under his control, and eventually he was able to detect the presence of someone else's thoughts. If one imagines the devil as a terrifying horned creature, such a notion is mistaken. Perhaps in the material world the devil might have horns, but in the world of Tesla's visions he was just a blob of light that was slightly different in spectrum and density from the surrounding space. This light was incomprehensible to Tesla. He could not comprehend it, he could not contemplate it. The light was a separate, isolated entity inside his head. Experiencing curiosity, Tesla decided to try to make contact with this being. Tesla associated the devil with a luminous blob. It occurred to me that in some languages the devil's name, like Lucifer, means a bearer of light. In Latin, the word lux translates to light, and pheros means to bear. In Roman mythology, Lucifer is associated with the morning star, the planet Venus, which corresponds to ancient Greek Phosphorus and ancient Slavic Denitsa. Since the end of Middle Ages in Christian tradition, Lucifer began to be considered as the fallen angel, identified with Satan and the devil. Sorry for the digression, let's continue on from here. Tesla became curious and decided to make contact with this unusual light. This light made contact with the scientist's thoughts. The communication was not like a normal conversation where one asks questions and the other answers them. This dialogue continued uninterrupted, more like a sudden influx of information into the mind, when new neural connections are quickly formed. Tesla comprehended everything at once. It was like an instantaneous illumination, when everything becomes clear. And then it turned out that this light represented the devil, one of God's angels whose job was to oversee life on earth. The devil did not act as an adversary to the Creator. The notion that anyone could oppose God proved to be an incredible delusion. The devil fulfilled his assigned role, performing tasks assigned to him outside of his immediate proximity to the throne of the Creator. These duties weighed on him, bringing sadness, but also a mild sense of interest in those who sought to understand God's plan by leaving the body in this unusual way. The devil was accustomed to encounters with so-called travelers who had reached this state, perhaps a kind of astral, through long meditations and strict fasts that subdued the physical body. The devil and Tesla mutually studied each other. One could say that their minds had merged to some extent. Tesla felt powerful, realized the possibilities of his inventions and the power they could give. He realized how they would change the world, saw the full potential of the good they could bring as well as the evil they could inflict. The ordeal filled him with dread. Tesla stepped back, and the connection was broken. His body went into convulsions, and he felt himself falling on something hard. When he came to, he found himself in a state of panic. His clothes were soaked with sweat and his heart was beating frantically. Thanks to his photographic memory, he retained memories of everything he experienced in that half-dead state. Later on, throughout his life, he never stopped mentally returning to that vision. Yes, we know that Tesla could have changed the world. But it didn't. Atmospheric transmission of electricity, death rays, none of these ideas were ever realized as weapons or any necessary means. Tesla destroyed all of his notes. While I won't get into the controversy in this context, there is an assumption that atmospheric electricity technology did exist and was spread throughout many densely populated cities. Lots of strange photos from past centuries exist, but today's talk is on a different topic. We'll discuss it another time. The devil tested Tesla by offering him a sense of power and authority, and according to Tesla himself, he was able to resist and deflect the temptation at the right moment. He is now seen as one of the greatest geniuses, not the greatest villain. In that conversation with Twain, Tesla opened up to the writer, saying that God exists and that the devil tempts people by testing them and revealing their true nature. He also expressed the idea that after death, life does not end, that none of the people who have ever lived on Earth die definitively. They are all around us, here and now, with us. These are the revelations of Nikola Tesla. Of course, this story may be hard to believe. There will probably be among you both skeptics and those who recognize this information as quite plausible. Most likely, these revelations have some basis in fact. Consider this: people often attribute their misdeeds to others, including the devil, as they say, the devil has gone astray. Nevertheless, all the misfortunes of mankind have been committed by human hands, and no one forces you to do bad things, such as throwing an empty can on the pavement or passing by a hungry dog. Perhaps this fallen angel was sent to Earth as a kind of controller, testing people for moral fortitude, to see what they are really like, what their soul is like.